Think about it, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is a survival horror game. Halloween. Hi, I'm Dylan and I can hear your eyes rolling from here. But before you comment, Ocarina of Time does fall into many genres, but in this video I'll be talking about how the game closely resembles the survival horror genre. How spooky. You might even say this video is Halloween themed. Boo! Ghosts. If you haven't played a survival horror game, you're missing out on shitting yourself. Ha! Fuck off! Stop it! They're not for everyone. The basic concept of the survival horror genre is that the player is incredibly vulnerable to the world and its occupants. You will often have a lack of guns, ammo, and tools to defend yourself. In Outlast, all you are given is a camera, so all you can really do is run. Or in my case, stand there screaming while my head gets ripped off. I'm not really good with the horror part of the survival horror genre. Survival horror games often de-emphasize combat and rather focus on puzzle solving and the evasion of enemies. Survival horror games will often use the mechanics of the game against you. In Resident Evil, the fixed camera positions not only allow for a more cinematically told story, but they also made it harder to control than if it was, say, first person. Doom 3, while not de-emphasizing combat, had a flashlight that you had to switch away from your gun in order to use, which in its near pitch black levels was terrifying. A core feature in many survival horror games, albeit not all, is the feeling of isolation. Players will rarely, if ever, run into other characters, furthering the feeling of fear. In Ocarina of Time, the Uber challenge is an extension of the 3 heart challenge, which involves finishing the game with only 3 hearts rather than the maximum of 20. But the Uber challenge takes that a step or 10 further. I'll link to the full rules in the description, but the key takeaways are 3 hearts, no deaths, limited special equipment, and using a broken giant's knife as much as possible. There's a whole terrifying list of requirements and rules, but the basic concept is to do as much as possible in the game with as little as possible. And as you can imagine, defeating Ganon with no special equipment and only 3 hearts would be pretty horrific. These new rules place a heavy focus on avoiding combat when Hylianly possible. See what I did there? Hylianly? Because he's Hylian? Playing the game with such an incredible amount of vulnerability and thus difficulty would most certainly cause you some level of fear, with the game over requirements extended from not only running out of hearts, but triggering certain events, like picking up a dungeon map. This takes Ocarina of Time beyond action-adventure and extends it into the survival genre. But as we know, dying isn't the sole source of fear in horror games, so how can Ocarina of Time be both survival and horror? We'll get to that. Hyrule does, however, have a very diverse cast of characters that you can meet and interact with. But other than that, it's a pretty barren place that often leaves you feeling very isolated. It's not as bad as Amnesia, but still. If you want to learn more about the actual population of Hyrule, check this video right here that I made where I went around and counted every single person in Hyrule. Those were good times. Playing by these rules doesn't use the game's mechanics against you per se, but rather the player's choice. A lot of games rely very heavily on player decision and input, and so does how we play them. Choosing to game over if you use the power crouch stab isn't a creator-imposed game mechanic, but rather a player-created one. Similar to if you choose to ignore voluntary storylines in Mass Effect or Skyrim, these are player choices to ignore parts of a game that can be ignored. Like playing the Game of Thrones drinking game. Clearly the creators didn't intend for you to take a shot every time someone dies, but you decided to. Or at least I did, because that's fun. These are player-imposed mechanics, like a mod, but without all the work. That being said, I'd be surprised if someone hasn't gone in and actually created an Uber Challenge mod that kills you when you try and use the Iron Boots. As long as you fear death, the fact that using a second bottle now means game over brings a whole new level of fear to a bottle, which after that Demon Mirror Oculus movie, isn't that unbelievable? It's especially interesting because the game obviously wasn't built as a survival horror game, so it doesn't come with any of the bells and whistles. You can't hide in a locker from enemies or stealth kill something from a bush. All you can do is run. As long as we're looking at this from a different angle, let's look at how the story invokes fear. It's about a young child who dies over and over and over again while trying to defeat a demon by investigating horrific temples, sometimes even at night. I mean, has Link never seen a horror movie? Never investigate stuff at night. That's how you die. Not to mention the actually terrifying parts of that game, like the re-dead zombies that hump you and scream their terrifying scream, or the human Skulltula horrific hybrids, or the stall children that literally rise from the ground at night. While the game certainly evokes fear in its traditional playthrough, the Uber challenge creates fear out of everything, not just imagery. Suddenly, if you accidentally use the Deku stick, you're dead. If you use the Zora tunic, you're dead. And if you accidentally use the long shot, you guessed it, you're dead. It treads the fine line between survival horror and grief gaming, as many of them do. I'm looking at you, Alien Isolation. And for more on grief gaming, be sure to check out this video I did on it from a couple weeks ago. While this all probably sounds absurd to you, the context and perspective to which you approach a game with can drastically impact how you respond to it. Playing stealthily in Deus Ex Human Revolution makes it feel like a stealth game, while going guns blazing makes it feel like a third-person shooter. When you play survival mode in Minecraft, it feels like a survival game, and when you play creative mode in Minecraft, it's a world-building game. The only difference with Ocarina of Time is that it wasn't built to be played in different ways. And this is nothing really new. Mario Paint was originally built primarily as a paint program like MS Paint, but the music composer side of the game has since become the most popular and widely adopted part of that game. The true horror in this game is not what goes bump in the night, not what's loud or shocking or gory, but rather simply just death. If omitting certain key elements of power through gameplay can create a virtual survival horror game, is it possible for other games with this possibility to become survival horror or really any other genre? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, be sure to click right on my face to subscribe, or at least think about it. GIF? Let's see what you guys thought. The Magnificent Pony sarcastically suggests I do an episode about the JPEG as the embodiment of the Kabbalic Tree of Life. You were sarcastic, but I really want to do that now. That sounds fun! Yes, Dark Crooks, GIF is love. The GIF-GIF argument is strong with this comment section, and unfortunately, it looks like it's still tied, like it is and probably always will be. Sorry, Jais. Benji Doma hopes that in the future we will be able to put GIFs on paper, like Harry Potter. That would be awesome. Wait, did Harry Potter's newspapers predict the future of online journalism? That's a video. Apparently I offended a bunch of you that still use Facebook. I'm sorry about that, but guys, come on. It's Facebook. A lot of you disagreed with me when I said that GIF was a genre, saying that it's nothing but a file format. But what about the evolution of the word film? When I say film, you probably don't necessarily think of a piece of plastic covered in emulsion that's sensitive to light. You probably think of movies. But that's not necessarily what film is. Film can be many things. And certain people don't think that all movies are film. Some people think that only highbrow and intelligent movies are film, or things that are only shot on film can be film. But a lot of people use film to describe moving images, which is one of the definitions for it. And with GIFs, a lot of people are using GIFs to describe things that aren't GIFs. So a Vine is being described as a GIF when technically it's not a GIF. And an Instagram video is also being described as a GIF, even though it too is not a GIF, it's just a short looping video. So the solution to this naming problem is to identify key characteristics of what a GIF is and apply it to different technical formats in the same way that film can be digital, among other things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.